Morning, Sasha. How we have got new data coming in from China. So this is about the electric car industry, and we've got a slow start in January. That was to be expected because, of course, the country is still healing from the first COVID wave, and ultimately also this is a quiet quarter, Q1 traditionally, and we've got the Spring Festival coming up as well. So expect some more sluggishness in the market, I would expect, but let's have a look at the registrations. So these are the leaked license plate numbers that we get occasionally, and keep in mind they are not deliveries per se, but are coming quite close, so they give us an indication of where the different OEMs are heading here. So for this week, we've got, as I mentioned, overall a weaker registration number coming in, and for BYD, that's the blue bar here, that's the strongest one coming in, above 35,000, so close to 36,000 new energy vehicles being registered here. The next one, which you might know here on this chart, is Lixiang. So that's 3,704 cars that got a license plate here. It's a hybrid, it's not a battery electric vehicle, but more on that later. Then we've got here NIO coming in, that's Waylai, 2,818. Tesla, 2,110. Bauma, so that's BMW, 2,103. Dajong, that's Volkswagen, 1,692. What else? We've got Xiaopeng, Xpeng, 1,551. Neta, that's another Chinese EV startup by the Geely brand, 1,511. And then we have here notably also Aito, which is a Huawei brand, or let's put it like this, 1,143, and Bentley, that's Mercedes-Benz, 1,113. So this is just the overall number. Generally, I would advise to take these numbers cautious in terms of that weekly numbers don't tell the whole story. Of course, one would have to say that here, especially Tesla is kind of disappointing there. We knew that Tesla is currently, trying to incentivize more buyers with their price cuts. So of course, this doesn't reflect in the current week. We should expect more so in the next week's coming, but also keep in mind the first couple of weeks and also actually the first 2 months of the quarter are generally where we see more exports than actually a focus on the local market. Nonetheless, that's a really low number here for Tesla, even falling behind NIO. And NIO, to be frank, this number is coming out quite strong relatively, I would say, given that, of course, for NIO, it's also the question whether or not they will face issues with the economy being down currently and how fast this recovery from the opening of the zero COVID policy will work out. So I would have expected, given like how the entire industry here has been coming down in this first January week, maybe a 1,000 something number by NIO, so the 2,818 are quite good. Hopefully that can continue in this fashion, because that would be actually quite strong numbers here, in my point of view. But then I want to point out actually what I really want to use this data and putting it into perspective here. And because we cannot always compare apples to pears, because, for example, here I've put that one into brackets here. Of course, BYD is not only selling battery electric vehicles that are going into this statistics here. I don't have the exact numbers right now. I didn't crunch these numbers for this chart here, but generally there are more or less 50% of these cars that are at least plug-in hybrids. And what we also need to put into consideration here, that the average sales price for BYD here is around 167,000 yuan. So that is a quite low average sales price. Of course, they have models like the BYD Seal, which is priced around 240,000 RMB or even less, more comparing with the Tesla Model 3. I made a video about that Tesla with the latest price cuts is directly taken on the BYD in the segment, right? However, you need to put into context that, of course, BYD is selling lots of much cheaper cars than this on average. So that's bringing the average sales prices down here. For Li Auto, the average sales price is actually also quite considerable here, almost 400,000 K. But once again, BYD is kind of this cheat, Li Auto here is this kind of a cheat device in my point of view, because it's essentially a battery on top of a gas guzzler, which is a range extender, if you will. But I mean, that's using 7 liters of gasoline here. And so that's not a fully electric car there. Next, for NIO, the average sales prices are quite high, so more than 440,000 RMB. That is the average, actually, by the way, of January to November for the full year of 2022. And this is the average price tag, so in a sense that we can compare it between different vehicle makers, so it's not the reported earnings price tag, but alone from the price tag you can see that NIO is selling higher on average than BMW, for example, and also Mercedes is slightly higher than NIO there. But this is the class where NIO is competing, right? And if you take this, for example, here in comparison to Tesla, which has been around 306,000 RMB here on average already before the price cuts. This is reason for the argument that one shouldn't compare NIO and Tesla directly. You cannot compare somebody who's selling units that are average priced much higher, and this is also, to be frank, one of the reasons why I keep on saying that, for example, NIO houses and the swapping network, although this might be a investment in terms of what NIO has to put down on money in order to build this up. However, you can clearly see here the benefits of that, namely that they are able to position at these high average sales prices, directly competing with German OEMs that have a legacy of branding and a reputation in China. So this is showing the extraordinary, really and remarkable results, in my point of view, as a Chinese brand that NIO has achieved there. You cannot do this without the necessary investment there, and we'll see going forward whether or not NIO can keep those prices for the NIO brand and then have the sub-brand competing in lower price segments. However, this is the kind of the mode that I see NIO is creating there, and really a outstanding result in my point of view there. And so it also doesn't make sense comparing Tesla and NIO there in this regard, as they are really competing in different price classes and for different customers, in my point of view. And also this doesn't make sense that talking about the stock price, that NIO is actually trading so much in sync with Tesla's stock, as many investors are seeing NIO just as a Tesla of China, which is completely false, and therefore it's trading as a proxy. Like we've seen that with the recent decline in Tesla share prices, NIO has been hit most, and it's really not reflecting much of the relative strength that NIO is showing here, because it's ultimately the second largest battery electric vehicle manufacturer in China currently in this week, in this short time frame, obviously only, with this revenues of more than 1.2 billion RMB here. It's actually number one if you are saying that this is the only BEV manufacturer, but of course you need to see that BYD, even if you cut down half of the hybrids, if they cut that one out, the revenues would still exceed NIO. But once again, it's a totally different target segment, and so the fact that NIO is up there is quite remarkable. And also also remarkable, I must say, is BMW here. Quite close to NIO sales here. Actually, in the past, NIO was a little bit higher here in comparison to BMW, but I have to say I need to double check here whether or not this BMW number here actually also has some plug-in hybrids, because they're also famous in this area. I'm not sure if that one is part of the numbers here. So it might be that the actual numbers, and I can check that in another video, of BMW for only battery electric vehicles are actually lower than this number here. And same goes for Mercedes, which had previously to cut prices on their EQS and other models in China because they have relatively high prices, and I would say that possibly also facing a little bit of an issue here with the NIO offering with the ET7 and some of the SUVs as well being relatively good priced here in this area. What's kind of interesting here is that the Volkswagen average sales prices are quite low, it appears. I'm wondering why is that. Maybe there's a low-cost model going in here that I don't have on my mind right now. But anyways, this is kind of this perspective that I think is important to see, looking at revenues. You know, how much NIO is making here relatively, actually even exceeding Tesla right now. But as I mentioned, I think going forward, Tesla should see a ramp up in volume there based on the price decreases that it had. Let's see if NIO can stick to sell at those high prices, or if they are forced to, because of the slow economy, to actually also cut a little bit of their prices, or we see actually no lower numbers by NIO going forward. But right now, just based on this week, these numbers are actually showing quite strong, and that should, for one, show also that the NIO product is quite strong in terms of those new SUVs, the ES7, the ET5, the ET7, which although had quite lower numbers recently, but we'll have to see if it can pick up again. But of course, those numbers cannot be achieved if the customer doesn't value those cars, right? So it shows remarkably the positioning of the product and how well it's getting accepted. And second of all, of course, also what I mentioned before, the investment in NIO houses, in battery swapping and so on, showing the fruits here in terms of being able to position like that as a premium to luxury vendor and having those high average sales prices. And so, yeah, this is the first data point that we get in 2023. It will be a rough ride, I would say, in the very beginning, the first quarter at least, also with the Chinese New Year, but maybe also in the second quarter we'll see the pickup of demand might be faster than one would anticipate, given how quickly this wave of COVID has already swept through the country, and now people have high savings and should be willing to spend those, hopefully also maybe first on a trip overseas, but second of all maybe also in individual transportation, also given that they want to swap out of the public transport and indeed want to sit in their own cars, and now they have a bright future and, you know, less of uncertainty going forward. So that's the video for now. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you soon.